Hi, Kate. Welcome to Potterwatch.
Hi, Holly. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell the students who you are, please?
My name is Kate Nolfi. I'm a professor in the Philosophy Department at UVM. Yeah, and an avid Harry Potter fan since a very young age.
All right. Can you tell us what question you brought for us today?
Yeah. So one thing that has always, so I'm a philosopher, and so perhaps unsurprisingly, I have a kind of affinity for that word, philosopher. And one of the things that has always sort of puzzled me about the first Harry Potter book is the fact that when the book was first released in the UK, it came out under the title Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And then when it was released in the US, the US publisher changed the title for the sort of US release to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And I have read a very little bit about why, sort of the publisher's reasoning behind that change. And it sounds like the publisher was sort of thinking two things. One, that American children would not be familiar with the fact that the Philosopher's Stone is already an item that has a role in mythology, kind of dating all the way back to Greek mythology. And two, the publisher was thinking that American children would be more excited about reading a book where the kind of connection to magic was super explicit. So the idea would be calling it Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone puts the fact that there's going to be magic in the book kind of right up front, in a way that Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone does not. So I have kind of wondered how the two different titles affect the way in which a reader would engage with the text of the book, or engage with the narrative. And so that's kind of my question. And sort of give you a kind of quick pass answer that I'm not very satisfied with, which is that the two different titles sort of encourage the reader to situate the narrative in two different literary traditions. The British title, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, sort of prompts the reader to situate the narrative within this kind of tradition of mythology, where the Philosopher's Stone has a certain role to play, and is the kind of thing that alchemists would kind of search for, regular human alchemists, not magical people, just ordinary human beings would try to create the Philosopher's Stone. Whereas the American title, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, would sort of encourage the reader to situate the narrative in a sort of, like, I guess, more straightforwardly fantasy kind of, right, different realm, not part of the sort of ordinary human world and experience, but kind of this alternate universe, alternate reality kind of frame. And so that's kind of as far as I've gotten with the question.
So in the British version, we've got this object that I think we see this a lot throughout the text, where there's that pleasure of recognition, that there's this thing that Muggles have always sort of like thought existed, and it turns out it's real. within the text, because
yeah, right.
This Philosopher's Stone. But if we've got a Sorcerer's Stone, it's just this made up sort of MacGuffin that that doesn't have that like rich connection to the sort of Mongol mythology.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of in with the British title, it sort of encourages the reader to imagine the narrative as taking place in your world, right? Mm-hmm. In the world that I live in. It's just a part of the world that I live in that I don't know about. Mm-hmm. Whereas the American title maybe sort of encourages a more sort of thinking like, this is not our world. This is like an imaginary world that I can enter into and is sort of like our world in various ways, but it's not the world that I live in.
Right, right. So the other thing that this brought to mind for me is this tension that I see throughout the series of thinking about what makes a person a magical person. And the word sorcerer to me sort of falls in that camp of like innate magic. When Harry says to Hagrid, I can't really be a wizard, and he says, no, you'll be a thumping good one once you get trained up. Look at who your parents are. And so there's this idea that like some people, we know that people are going to be great wizards because of either destiny or genetics, whether that is pure bloodness or just like who your parents are, versus and that to me, so that lines up with sorcerer. And then when I think of philosopher, that's earned, that's learned. And to a certain degree, they must think that you can learn to be a wizard because this is a wizarding school. They're teaching them. But there's certainly like there's a limit, I think, to the degree to which the text accepts that you can become a great wizard by study. Somebody like Hermione should be the star of everything. She's clearly cleverer than everybody else, but she's kind of treated as kind of like this magical Google throughout the books, rather than becoming like the foremost witch. She's the brightest witch of her age, but she's not necessarily like the greatest witch. And so that sort of to me points at that tension that's in the text as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting angle to take, and I wonder how much of that one of the things that philosophy as a discipline struggles with is this sort of like genius mentality. So this idea that like people have the gift, some sort of innate philosophical talent. Mm-hmm. And there's some really interesting research that suggests that this might be connected to the fact that philosophy is a very male-dominated field. Mm-hmm. There's some research that suggests that as a sort of general phenomenon, in areas where there's this sort of cultural understanding of like some people just are touched with the gift, mm-hmm. And other people, no matter how hard they work, they're not touched with the gift. There's some interesting research that suggests that in general, areas where that kind of cultural understanding is in place are areas that exhibit this sort of disproportionately male skewing. Mm-hmm. And I that's something that I think philosophy is starting to kind of come to terms with and really wrestle with and try and push back against. Mm-hmm. But it's clearly, that is clearly like a part of our culture, this idea that like some people are just kind of, they're innately good at this kind of thing. Even if that kind of sits with the idea that you could learn, you could be trained up. And so I guess I wonder, especially for the American reader, how much sort of thinking of the stone as the Philosopher's Stone would really challenge the idea that magic is something that's somehow innate, or you kind of have to have the gift. It's interesting. I guess I maybe am a little, I would like to believe that people think of philosophy as the sort of thing that one learns, a set of skills that one develops. Being a philosopher is something that you become as a result of training. But I guess I'm not wholly convinced that that has sort of permeated our cultural understandings as much. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's an interesting question because I had sort of heard, yes, the publisher changed it because American kids wouldn't be interested in the Philosopher's Stone. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, that is a really interesting question. I have heard that kind of gloss on it too, and I think, I mean, there's a part of me that thinks there is this kind of anti-intellectualism that runs through American culture that maybe maybe there's something to this idea that American kids would be less interested in a book about the Philosopher's Stone. But I have also done quite a lot of philosophy programming in K through 12 education, and in particular with like K through 6 students. And they're generally very gung-ho. They think philosophy is cool. And so I don't know. I mean, the optimist in me likes to think that American kids would be super excited about engaging with that wouldn't be off-putting at the very least to American kids. But I do kind of acknowledge that there is this sort of anti-intellectualist thread that maybe more than I'm willing to admit would might have that effect.
Mm-hmm. And it is the parents who are buying the books, at least, when they're starting in 1988 or whatever to put them out there. They've got to appeal to parents who may underestimate their kids as well. I think they would not be interested in this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Kate, for talking about
thank you for having me.
Us. And yeah, thank you.